Wind whispers through ancient pines, and a howl echoes from a distant mountain. What if every troll story holds a hidden truth, a fragment of a lost reality? We are about to unmask the trolls of Norse folklore, peeling back centuries of simplified tales. We will strip away the layers added by fear and dogma to reveal something profound beneath. By the end of this journey, you will see these legendary beings not as monsters, but as essential pieces of a forgotten cosmic puzzle. We will explore how sunlight turned them to stone, why gods married them, and what secret wisdom they guarded. This is an investigation into the deepest layers of myth, where folklore meets esoteric truth. What forgotten part of the world are these stories trying to protect? That distant howl belongs to a being far older than the gods themselves. To understand trolls, we must first meet their true ancestors, the Jotnar. This name, Jotnar, or sometimes Jotun, is the key that unlocks the entire mystery. Calling them giants is like calling a hurricane a strong breeze. It captures a fraction of the truth, but misses the immense, raw power at its core. The Jotnar were not born on mountains. They were born from the mountains, from the very fabric of creation. Before there was a sun or a moon, before even the first god drew breath, there existed only a silent, yawning emptiness called Ginnungagap. On one side lay the searing fires of Muspelheim. On the other, the frozen, mist-shrouded wastes of Niflheim. Where their energies met in that great void, the ice of Niflheim began to drip. From those primal melting drops, life stirred. The first being to coalesce from that primordial ooze was Ymir, a colossal hermaphroditic Jotun. And from Ymir's very body, from his sweat and his flesh, more Jotnar emerge. They are not merely inhabitants of the wild. They are the conscious essence of the untamed world, the soul of the glacier, the voice of the avalanche, the relentless push of the forest, reclaiming a field. When the Aesir gods, led by Odin and his brothers, later slew Ymir and fashioned the ordered world from his corpse, they were not defeating evil. They were imposing structure onto chaos. The gods built walls, established laws, and created a sanctuary called Midgard. The Jotnar remained outside, the ever-present force of wild nature that presses against the fence. Their conflict with the Aesir is not a simple battle of good versus evil. It is the eternal, necessary tension between order and chaos, between the cultivated field and the wild forest, between the warmth of the hearth and the chilling vastness of the night. The trolls of later folklore are the echoes of these Jotnar, their power diminished and their nature misunderstood, but their origin points back to this fundamental, cosmic truth. This profound connection to the wild world explains why trolls are so fiercely tied to specific places. To truly unmask them, we must step into the animistic heart of ancient Scandinavia, where every stone, stream, and grove held a living spirit. In this worldview, trolls were not random monsters. They were landvitir, land wights, the conscious soul of a particular location. A certain oddly shaped mountain peak was not just a mountain. It was a slumbering giant. That dense, unnaturally quiet forest was not just trees. It was the territory of a forest wight. The thunderous waterfall was not just water. It was the voice of a spirit. This belief transforms the landscape from a passive backdrop into a living, breathing community of beings. Think of the many folktales where a troll is caught by the sunrise and turns to stone. On one level, it is a simple story about their weakness to light. But on a deeper animistic level, that story is an explanation. It answers the question a curious child or a wandering traveler might ask. Why does that cliff look like a grimacing face? Why does that boulder sit alone in the middle of the field? The folklore replies, because it is a troll, forever frozen in place by the dawn. The land itself is their petrified body. This concept of a genius loci, the protective spirit of a place, is not unique to the Norse. We see it in the kami of Shinto tradition, in the dryads and naiads of Greek myth, in countless indigenous beliefs worldwide. It is a universal human recognition that some places feel alive, have a personality, demand respect. The warnings woven into troll folklore served a vital, practical purpose. Do not go to that lake at night, or the water horse will drag you under. Do not take stones from that cairn, or the mound dweller will bring you misfortune. Do not build your farm too close to that forest, or the trolls will steal your livestock. These were not merely scary stories to keep children indoors. They were ecological and spiritual protections encoded in narrative. They marked boundaries, preserved sacred sites, and prevented overexploitation of fragile places. By fearing the troll in the mountain, people left the mountain itself largely undisturbed. The folklore acted as an ancient conservation law, a way of saying this place is not entirely ours. It belongs to another order of being, and we enter only with caution, if at all. So when we hear a tale of a troll bridge where travelers must pay a toll or answer a riddle, we are not just hearing a fantasy. We are hearing the echo of a time when crossing into certain territory required an acknowledgement, a ritual exchange with the spirit that ruled there. The troll was the guardian of the threshold, the embodied conscience of the wild place. This brings us to their most famous and seemingly straightforward weakness. Sunlight turns a troll to stone. It is the ultimate, inescapable end for these creatures of the night. But what if this is not a simple monster trait? What if this vivid image is a profound metaphor, layered with hidden meaning? The first layer of interpretation is historical and spiritual. The spread of Christianity across Scandinavia brought what was called the new light of faith. This light sought to illuminate and dispel the old ways, the pagan beliefs deeply tied to the land and its spirits. Under this new, rigid light, the fluid, animate world of the Jotnar and Landvitir began to harden. Their stories did not vanish. Instead, they fossilized. The living spirit of the mountain became just a mountain. The conscious force of the forest became mere timber. The troll, the active agent of the wild, was transformed in the stories into a static, stone monument of a forgotten past. The sunlight of a new dogma petrified a living tradition, leaving only its stony silhouette for us to puzzle over centuries later. Yet there is a second, more cosmic layer to this. Recall that the Jotnar are the primal chaos from which ordered reality was formed. In this view, the troll represents raw, unformed potential, the swirling energy of creation before it takes shape. Daylight, the realm of reason, structure, and fixed form, acts upon this chaotic potential. When the creative chaos of night is struck by the unwavering light of day, it solidifies. It becomes manifest. The troll turning to stone is an allegory for the moment inspiration becomes a sculpture, when a thought crystallizes into a law, when the fluid dream of possibility hardens into the tangible reality of the waking world. The troll does not die in the sun. It completes its transformation, giving its wild essence to become part of the permanent landscape. Finally, we can view this through a shamanic lens. In many traditions, certain spirits and energies are only accessible in altered states of consciousness, often symbolized by darkness, dreams, or the twilight hours. The troll is a being of that other reality, the unseen world that parallels our own. The bright, full light of common day represents ordinary, consensus reality, a state too rigid and solid for such primal forces to maintain their fluid form. To interact with these deeper currents of existence, one must enter the liminal space, the dusk or dawn, the trance state, the darkness of the ritual lodge. In that space, the stone can breathe again, and the ancient wisdom can move. The warning in the folktale, then, becomes an encoded spiritual instruction. Some truths retreat from the glaring light of simplistic explanation. They must be approached with respect, in the proper time and with the right state of mind, or they will simply appear as dead rock, their vital mystery forever locked away. But if sunlight petrifies their power, where does that living essence go? It retreats, not into nothingness, but into the hidden folds of the world. This brings us to a crucial and often overlooked truth. The clear lines we draw today between trolls, dwarves, and elves simply did not exist in the old Nordic mind. These beings existed on a spectrum, a fluid continuum of the unseen. In Iceland, they speak of the Huldrefolk, the hidden people, and this term is a master key. It does not describe one species. It describes a condition, a state of being. They are the ones who are hidden from ordinary sight, who inhabit a world that is intertwined with ours, yet just out of phase. A troll in one valley might be called a mountain spirit in the next, and a dwarf in the tales of a third. The categories bleed into one another because they are all manifestations of the same fundamental force, the conscious spirit of place and material. Consider the dwarves, master smiths, who forge the gods' greatest treasures. They live in the earth, in rocks and mountains, and are often described as misshapen, strong, and fiercely protective of their homes and crafts. Now listen to a description of a cave troll, or a mountain troll from folklore. The resemblance is unmistakable. Both are subterranean, both are formidable, and both are deeply connected to the bones of the world. The legendary sword Gram, used by the hero Sigurd to slay the dragon Fafnir, was forged by a dwarf. Yet in other stories, it is a troll who possesses incredible skill at the forge. The distinction is modern, not ancient. They are different names for the master of the underground workshop, the genius of metal and stone. Then we have the elves, often pictured as beautiful, luminous beings living in serene mounds. Yet Icelandic folklore is filled with accounts of Alegaboltir elf hills, which are treated with the same solemn respect as a troll's mountain. Disturb such a hill to build a road, and machinery breaks down, workers fall ill, and misfortune follows until the project is rerouted. This is the exact same narrative logic applied to trolls who curse those who steal from their land. The beautiful elf and the grim troll are two faces of the same landvita. One shows its benevolent, fruitful aspect, the other its defensive, wrathful side. It all depends on human action. Treat the place and its hidden dweller with respect, leave offerings, and acknowledge its presence, and you might receive blessing and protection. Disrespect it, invade it, or greedily take from it, and you will meet its formidable, troll-like defense. This fluidity tells us that the original world was not concerned with rigid taxonomy. It was concerned with relationship. The being was defined by its nature, its home, and its interaction with humans, not by a checklist of physical traits. A single entity could be an elf to a respectful neighbor, and a terrifying troll to a greedy logger. Our modern need to sort them into neat boxes, to say this is a dwarf, that is a troll, and that other is an elf, reflects our own disconnect. We have lost the perceptual lens that saw the living personality in the landscape, and in its place we have constructed a simplified mythology. To truly unmask the troll, we must let these categories dissolve. We must see them again as part of the Huldrefolk, the vast, varied, and hidden population of the world's soul, whose true form is as changeable as the weather and as ancient as the stone. The fluid nature of these beings reveals a startling truth. The most formidable, wise, and independent forces in the Norse cosmos were often female. to speak only of male trolls, and Jotnar is to miss half the story, and arguably the most powerful half. We must now meet the jigger, the Giantesses, who shatter every simplistic notion of what trollish power means. These were not mere consorts or monsters. They were seers, witches, sovereign queens of wilderness, and the mothers of destinies that would shake the world of gods and men. Consider Angabotha, whose name means she who brings grief. Far more than a villain, she was a prophetess of the highest order. She saw the threads of fate and willingly bore 3 children with the god Loki, each one a personification of a world-ending force. Her daughter Hel became the ruler of the underworld. Her son Fenrir was the wolf destined to devour Odin at Ragnarok. Her other son, Jormungandr, grew to become the Midgard serpent encircling the earth. Angabotha did not birth mere monsters. She gave form to the inevitable conclusions woven into the cosmos itself. She was the vessel for destiny, a creator in her own terrifying right. Then there is Skadi, a giantess of mountains and winter. When the gods killed her father, she did not weep helplessly. She armed herself and marched to Asgard to demand compensation, a breathtaking act of defiance. The gods agreed with one condition. She must choose a husband from among them by looking only at their feet. Skadi, hoping to select the handsome Baldur, instead chose the sea god Njord by mistake. Their marriage between the mountain dweller and the beach god was famously ill-fated. But here is the crucial point. The tale does not end with her submission. Unhappy, Skadi simply left. She returned to her ancestral mountains, to her skiing and hunting, living on her own terms. She became a goddess in her own right, worshipped as a patron of hunters and the rugged, untamed high places. She represents the untamable feminine spirit that cannot be bound by even a divine contract. Her power is one of complete sovereignty. Perhaps the most poignant story is that of Jotnar, a giantess of such radiant beauty that the sun god Freyr fell into a desperate, consuming melancholy upon seeing her. He sent his servant to woo her, offering treasures. Jotnar's response is not that of a passive prize. She debates, she considers, and she sets her own price, demanding a specific magical sword from Freyr. She understands the transaction and asserts her value. In agreeing, she leaves her frozen home to bring her life-giving beauty to the world, a union that symbolizes the fertile marriage between sunshine and earth. But the feminine trollish power is not only in grand destinies and sovereignty. It is also in practical, life-saving magic. When the god Thor, in a rash moment, went to confront the giant Gerod without his hammer or his strength belt, he was walking into a trap. He would have been killed if not for the giantess Gridr. Seeing the danger, she intervened. She lent Thor her own magical belt of strength, her iron gloves, and her unbreakable staff. With her aid, Thor survived and triumphed. Gridr is the archetype of the hidden ally, the keeper of ancient wisdom and tools who steps in to rebalance the scales. She is the feminine power that supports and enables, not through weakness, but through a reservoir of knowledge the brash hero lacks. These stories collectively reframe everything. The trollish feminine is not a perversion. It is the source of prophecy, the embodiment of untamed nature's sovereignty, the keeper of practical magic, and the mother of cosmic forces. To label these beings as mere monsters is to blind ourselves to a profound strand of wisdom. They represent a feminine principle that is fierce, independent, deeply connected to the land, and absolutely essential to the balance of all things. Their power was feared by the gods not because it was evil, but because it was an equal and opposite force to their own structured order. This feminine power leads us directly into the heart of their most formidable art. The magic of the trolls and Jotnar was not a party trick. It was the primal sorcery that wove the world into being, and its echoes defined the very practice of Norse magic. To understand it, we must distinguish between two key strands. First, there is Seidr. This is a form of prophecy and fate weaving, often performed in a trance state. It involves seeing the hidden threads of destiny and, controversially, the ability to twist or cut them. Now, here is a secret the myths guard closely. The master of this art among the gods was not born with it. Odin, the All-Father, the seeker of all wisdom, had to learn Seidr, and his teacher was the goddess Freyja. This is a profound clue. Freyja's own father, Njord, was born among the Vanir, a tribe of gods deeply associated with fertility, nature, and magic, that feels distinctly closer to the wild Jotnar than the orderly Aesir. More tellingly, some traditions suggest her mother was a giantess. Freyja's lineage is a bridge between worlds. When Odin humbled himself to learn from her, he was not just learning a feminine art. He was receiving wisdom that flowed from the oldest sources, from the intuitive, chaotic power of the primal world that the Jotnar embodied. Seidr was their gift, a magic of connection and perception that operated outside of logic. Alongside Seidr flows Galdr. This is the magic of sound, of potent, chanted incantations. It is the voice-given power, the spell sung or screamed into existence. If Seidr is about seeing and weaving the unseen, Galdr is about commanding it with utterance. This, too, finds its roots in the raw forces of nature. Think of the Galdr of a shrieking storm wind, the incantation of a rushing river, the deep, resonant chant of stone shifting in the earth. Troll magic, in its purest form, is the untamed application of these forces. It is not neat or safe. It is the direct manipulation of reality's fabric through will and ancient instinctual knowledge. This is the magic of the curse that blights a farm for generations, the sudden fog that swallows a path, the storm called down upon an enemy's ship. It is the power of shape-shifting, of a Jotun or troll taking the form of a bear, a wolf, or even a tempting human to achieve its ends. This sorcery is fluid, reactive, and deeply tied to emotion and place. It contrasts sharply with the more structured magic the gods, particularly Odin, later developed. His great achievement was the discovery of the runes. After hanging himself on the world tree for 9 nights, he grasped these symbols of cosmic law. Runic magic is about carving order into chaos. It is intellectual, symbolic, and permanent. A rune is a stable key that unlocks a specific force. It is magic codified, made into a system that can be taught, written down, and used to build and bind. The god's magic seeks to impose a lasting pattern. The troll's magic is the living, breathing chaos from which those patterns are drawn. One is the architect's blueprint. The other is the wild, growing forest that provides the timber. The old stories are filled with this distinction. When a hero faces a troll, he often relies on cleverness, a named sword, or a specific runic charm, a piece of structured knowledge to counter a formless, overwhelming force. The troll does not need runes. Its will, its connection to the land, and its ancient tongue are its tools. This is why their magic feels so terrifying and potent in the tales. It is not a learned art. It is an inherited birthright, the voice of the world itself speaking through them. To hear a troll's Galdr was to hear the mountain itself utter a spell. This tangled web of magic reveals an even deeper secret, one that unravels the very idea of a simple war between gods and monsters. The bloodlines are blurred. The family trees are hopelessly intertwined. The truth is, the Aesir gods are part Jotnar themselves. This is not a minor detail. It is the central hidden engine of the entire Norse cosmos. Consider the lineage of Odin himself, the All-Father and chief of the Aesir. His mother was Bislaur, daughter of the giant Bolthorn. The wisdom Odin so desperately sought flowed in his veins from his giantess mother's line. Then there is Thor, the great giant slayer, the defender of Asgard. His mother is Jord, a personification of the earth. In many interpretations, Jord is herself a giantess, meaning Thor's formidable strength and connection to the land is a direct inheritance from the very forces he so often battles. The beautiful magical twins Freyr and Freyja are even more explicit. They are the children of the sea god Njord, who was born among the Vanir, but is explicitly named as a giant in many sources. Their mother is speculated to be Njord's own sister, a giantess named Nerthus, or an unnamed partner from his own people. This makes the most beloved gods of fertility and magic direct descendants of the giant race. The implications are staggering. It means the gods of order are not pure. They are hybrids. Their divine power is alloyed with the primal chaos of the Jotnar. This changes everything about their famous conflict. It is not a holy war against an external evil. It is a family drama, a perpetual internal struggle. The Aesir do not fight the Jotnar to destroy them. They fight to manage them, to harness that wild energy, because that energy is part of who they are. Odin's relentless quest for knowledge is a giant's hunger. Thor's explosive rage is a giant's storm. Freyja's deep magic is a giant's birthright. The gods are constantly negotiating with their own inherited chaos. This symbiosis is what makes the cosmos dynamic and creative. Pure order would be static, a beautiful but lifeless crystal. Pure chaos would be a formless, screaming void. But a world where order must constantly engage with, integrate, and sometimes violently restrain its own chaotic essence. That is a world where stories happen. That is a world where creation is possible. Every time Thor lifts his hammer to smash a giant's skull, he is not destroying the enemy. He is performing a ritual of self-control, using the structured force of Mjolnir, a dwarf-made symbol of order, to keep the untamed whirlwind of his own nature in check. He is defending the walls of Asgard from the very part of himself that wants to tear those walls down. The marriages between gods and giantesses are not scandals or mistakes. They are necessary renewals of this cosmic contract. When the god Njord marries the giantess Skadi, however briefly, it is an attempt to unite the sea and the mountains. When Frey falls for the giantess Gerda, his longing brings fertility to the frozen earth. These unions are the myths acknowledging that for life to flourish, the structured world must willingly embrace the wild. The so-called monsters are not outsiders. They are estranged cousins, unruly aunts, dangerous grandparents. The troll under the bridge, the giant on the mountain, they are reflections of the gods' own suppressed heritage. This blurred lineage tells us that the sacred and the monstrous are two sides of the same coin. To be whole, to be creative, to be truly powerful, requires acknowledging and integrating the wildness within. The gods' greatest fear at Ragnarok is not an invasion. It is a family reunion gone terribly wrong, where their repressed kin return to reclaim their share of the world. The most dangerous troll does not live under a mountain. He sits on a throne in Asgard, laughing among the gods he will one day help to destroy. Loki, the blood brother of Odin, is not a god in the traditional sense. He is a Jotun, a giant, adopted into the divine family. He is the ultimate troll archetype, the mask of chaos worn within the very halls of order. He is the living, breathing contradiction at the heart of the Norse cosmos. And to understand him is to finally unmask the troll's most sophisticated and terrifying form. Loki is not an outsider trying to break in. He is the insider whose very nature is to break things apart. As a shape-shifter, he embodies the fluid, unstable essence of the primal world. He becomes a mare to distract a stallion, a fly to harass a dwarf, a salmon to escape capture. He is the principle of transformation itself, refusing to be pinned to a single form or a single allegiance. This is the core trollish trait, the refusal of fixed identity, the living reminder that nothing, not even a god, is exactly what it seems. His role as a trickster and agent of chaos is not merely for mischief. It is a catalytic function. The god's world, for all its mead halls and mighty walls, can become stagnant, self-satisfied, rigid. Loki arrives like a spark thrown into a dry forest. He engineers crises that force invention, adaptation, and growth. When the giant who built Asgard's walls demands the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freyja as payment, it is Loki who creates the problem by vouching for the builder, and then Loki who devises the solution, transforming into a mare to distract the builder's magical horse. The gods get their wall, but they also get a new 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, born from Loki's equine form. Every solution he provides is born from a problem he created, and every gift carries the seed of future turmoil. He is the necessary chaos that prevents order from freezing into lifeless dogma. Yet this catalytic role has a devastating shadow. His union with the giantess Angabotha, the prophetess of grief, produces the ultimate trollish threats to the cosmic order itself. Their children are not mere monsters. They are apocalyptic forces given flesh. The wolf Fenrir is chaos so potent that only the most desperate, treacherous bindings can hold him. The Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, is entropy encircling the ordered world, waiting to release its coils. Their daughter Hel presides over the realm of those who did not die in battle, a necessary, cold counterpart to the warm glory of Valhalla. These are Loki's true legacy, the children of a troll's mind and a giantess' foresight. They are the inevitable consequences of allowing chaos a permanent seat at the table. The gods try to manage these threats, to bind the wolf, to cast out the serpent, to relegate Hel to her gloomy domain. But in doing so, they are only postponing the final accounting. Loki, the insider, becomes the architect of Ragnarok. When he breaks free of his own torturous bonds, he will steer the ship of the dead, Naglfar, and lead his monstrous children and the legions of giants against the gods. This is the troll's final, logical act. The chaos invited inside to keep things interesting eventually remembers its true nature and consumes the house from within. Loki is the ultimate troll because he represents the terrifying truth that the line between divine ingenuity and world-ending destruction is terrifyingly thin. He is the clever solution that becomes an inescapable trap, the witty friend who knows exactly where to plant the knife. The gods need him, rely on him, and are doomed by him. In this, he perfectly mirrors the role of the troll in folklore, the unpredictable spirit of the place who can be a helpful guardian or a vengeful curse, depending on how he is treated and what boundaries are crossed. The gods crossed the ultimate boundary by believing they could domesticate the wild without being changed by it. Loki is that change, wearing a smile, until the day he does not. Loki's betrayal reveals a terrifying possibility. If the gods themselves are part troll, then the forces they fear are not locked away in distant mountains. They are woven into the fabric of reality, accessible to anyone who knows how to listen. The ancient Norse knew this secret, and they developed a precise method for such communion. They called it Utista, the sitting out. This was no casual night under the stars. It was a deliberate, shamanic ritual, a conscious crossing of the threshold into the world of the Helgefolk. A seeker, often a practitioner of Seidr or Galdr, would choose a potent location as night fell. This could be a crossroads, where the paths between worlds were said to thin. It could be a burial mound, a gateway to ancestral wisdom. Most often it was a wild, untamed place, a forest clearing, a windswept cliff, or a shore beside a churning sea, a place where the landvitir was strongest. There they would sit, wrapped in a cloak against the cold, and enter a state of receptive trance. This was not an act of worship, but of direct engagement. The goal was to gain hidden knowledge, to receive a prophecy, to learn a healing charm, or to confront and negotiate with the spirit of that very place. Think of it as dialing a frequency. The ordinary noise of daily life, the structured world of Asgard, was tuned out. In the silence and solitude of the night, the seeker tuned in to the older, slower, more potent signal of the land itself. In this liminal state, the boundaries dissolved. The rustle in the bushes was no longer just an animal. The groan of a tree in the wind was no longer just wood. The looming shape of a boulder in the moonlight was no longer just stone. These were the murmurs and forms of the hidden wights. A sudden, overwhelming sense of a vast, patient presence could descend, the feeling of being watched by the mountain. This is where folklore may have been born. A traveler, lost and frightened, stumbling through such a place at night, their mind blurred by exhaustion and fear, might experience a fleeting glimpse of this other reality. Their rational mind, upon returning to the safety of dawn, would scramble to explain the encounter. What was that immense, shadowy figure by the cairn? It must have been a troll. What was that deep, rumbling voice from the earth? It must have been a curse. The folktale becomes a simplified, fear-based report of a profound spiritual encounter with the consciousness of the land. The Utaister practitioner, however, did not run, they sat. They opened themselves to the experience, seeking not to fight the presence, but to understand its language. They might hear a Galdr in the waterfall's roar, see a vision in the play of shadows, or feel the history of the place flow into them. This ritual reframes every troll story we have ever heard. The bridge where a troll demands a riddle is not just a fantasy obstacle. It is a symbolic representation of the Utaister itself. The crossing requires an exchange, a demonstration of wisdom or cleverness to prove you are not just a thief or an invader, but a conscious participant worthy of passage. The troll under the bridge is the guardian of that threshold, the embodied spirit of the river and the canyon. And the riddle is the key it offers. To answer correctly is to show you understand the hidden rules of that realm. This practice reveals the esoteric heart of Norse spirituality. The trolls and hidden wights were not myths to be believed or disbelieved. They were experiences to be approached, forces to be respectfully engaged with through specific, ritual technology. The world was alive, intelligent, and communicative. Danger lay not in the beings themselves, but in arrogant, unconscious interaction, in taking without asking, in building without seeing. The sitting out was the antidote to that arrogance, a way to sit humbly at the edge of the known and request an audience with the soul of the wild. It suggests that the greatest treasures, the deepest wisdom, and the most potent magic were not found in conquering the troll, but in having the courage to sit with it in the dark and listen. That courage to listen in the dark is rewarded with something far greater than gold. It grants access to a library older than time, a memory bank of the cosmos itself, guarded by the very beings we have misunderstood. Trolls are not just obstacles or forces of nature. They are the keepers of ancient wisdom, the primordial librarians of a reality that existed before the gods drew their first breath. Their knowledge is not written in books, but etched into the roots of mountains and the currents of underground rivers. To seek their counsel is to tap into the source code of the world. The myths give us stunning proof of this. Consider the epic wisdom contest between Odin and the giant Vafthrûdnir. Disguised as a traveler, Odin journeys to the giants' hall for one purpose: to test whose knowledge runs deeper. They trade questions about the creation of the world, the names of primordial beings, and the fates awaiting gods and giants at Ragnarok. Vafthrûdnir answers everyone with terrifying precision. He knows the oldest secrets. It is only when Odin asks a question that only he himself could possibly know. The final words he whispered into his dead son Baldur's ear before the funeral pyre: that the giant recognizes his guest and admits defeat. But the contest was nearly a draw. A giant, a being from the race of chaos, held knowledge that matched, and in some areas perhaps even surpassed, that of the Allfather. This was not a battle of strength, but a duel of intellect, and the trollish giant proved himself a master of cosmic lore. An even more profound example waits at the base of the world tree. This is Mimir, whose name means the rememberer. Mimir is a giant, a Jotnar of immense wisdom who guards a sacred well that lies beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots. The waters of this well are infused with cosmic memory and the raw power of Seidr magic. To drink from it is to gain insight into all things. Odin, in his relentless quest, sought a draught from this well. But Mimir, understanding its priceless value, demanded a sacrifice. He asked for Odin's right eye. The god agreed, plucking out his own eye and dropping it into the well's depths as payment. From that day forward, Odin the One-Eyed would periodically consult the severed head of Mimir, which he preserved with herbs and chanted spells, for counsel in times of dire need. Think about this image for a moment. The chief of the orderly gods keeps the talking head of a giant on his person as his most trusted advisor. This is not a trophy of a defeated enemy. It is an admission: the god's structured knowledge is incomplete. For the deepest truths, for the memories of how the world was before it was shaped, they must go to the source. They must humble themselves before the ancient, trollish consciousness that remembers the taste of the primordial ice and the first embers from Muspelheim. Mimir's well is not a godly place. It is a trollish place. It is a wellspring of the chaotic, intuitive, ancestral wisdom that the Jotnar embody. Its waters are the liquid form of the knowledge that Vafthrûdnir wielded, the same knowledge that flows in the veins of every Landvita and echoes in the silence of every troll-haunted forest. When we hear folk tales of trolls who ask riddles at bridges, we are seeing a faint folk memory reflection of this deeper truth. The troll is not just blocking the path. It is testing the traveler's worthiness to access a fragment of that old knowledge. The riddle is a key, and the correct answer is the proof that you are ready to receive a piece of the ancient wisdom that the troll, as guardian of that place, is sworn to protect. They are the custodians of a library we have forgotten how to read, where the books are made of stone and the stories are told in the growth of lichen and the erosion of cliffs. Their supposed stupidity in the later, simplified tales is a mask. Behind it lies an intelligence that operates on a geological timescale, a mind that remembers when the valley was a glacier and the meadow was a lake bed. To unmask the troll is to realize that the monster under the bridge might just be the last remaining teacher of a history that the sunlit world has long since chosen to forget. That library of stone and memory was not merely forgotten. It was deliberately slandered, its keepers recast as villains in a new story written by a conquering faith. With the slow, steady march of Christianity across Scandinavia, a profound rebranding campaign began. The complex, morally ambiguous Jotnar and the respected Landvita were systematically flattened. Their rich tapestry of power, wisdom and danger was reduced to a single crude label: demon. The old gods, like Odin and Thor, were redefined as devils or foolish sorcerers. The spirits of the land, the very consciousness of mountain and forest, were no longer sovereign entities to be negotiated with. They were now monstrous enemies, embodiments of sin and paganism to be feared, avoided, and ultimately destroyed. This is the primary mask we must peel away, the thick layer of religious propaganda that turned living cosmology into a children's monster story. The process was methodical. Missionaries and early church leaders understood that you cannot simply erase a belief system woven into the landscape itself. So they did not try to erase it. They inverted it. They took the existing, deeply felt power of a sacred grove or a spirit-haunted spring and declared that power was now evil. The genius loci, the protective spirit of the place, became a demonic troll lying in wait for the unwary Christian soul. This psychological shift is critical. It transformed a relationship of respect and caution into one of fear and revulsion. Where once a farmer might leave an offering of milk at a certain stone to ensure a good harvest, now he was taught to cross himself and hurry past, believing that same stone housed a malicious fiend. The living world was spiritually quarantined. This rebranding is etched literally into the landscape through church-building legends, which follow a remarkably consistent formula. A community decides to build a church. They choose a site, often one already recognized as spiritually potent, perhaps an old gathering place or a location near a sacred spring. But every night as they try to build, their work is mysteriously undone. Stones are scattered, foundations are ruined. The culprit is always a troll, a giant, or a land spirit enraged by this new intrusion. The people are helpless until a clever priest or a brave saint confronts the being. Sometimes it is a battle of wits, a riddle contest. More often, it is a direct confrontation where the holy man, armed with the cross and the name of Christ, defeats or drives off the creature. The church is then completed on that sanctified ground. On the surface, this is a simple tale of good triumphing over evil. But look deeper. The story admits the land already had a powerful guardian. The church did not bring holiness to a blank slate. It had to violently overwrite an existing holiness. The troll in the tale is the original landvitir, the rightful spiritual tenant. Its defeat is not the removal of evil, but the symbolic conquest of the old indigenous faith by the new imported one. The church built upon the troll's resting place is a permanent monument to this spiritual victory, literally grounding the new doctrine in the subjugated power of the old. This narrative served a dual purpose. For converts, it provided a satisfying explanation for why their ancestors' beliefs were wrong, framing them as dangerous superstition. For the church, it was a powerful tool for severing people's psychic connection to the animistic world, redirecting their awe and fear toward the ecclesiastical structure. The wise ancient female giantesses were recast as wicked hags. The shape-shifting, cunning Loki became a template for the devil himself. The profound, chaotic creativity of the Jotnar was reduced to mindless destructiveness. Their intelligence was replaced with a caricature of stupidity, a way to make them seem less threatening, more laughable than awe-inspiring. This is why so many later folktales feature trolls who are easily tricked, who are baffled by sunlight or the ringing of church bells. It is a form of narrative diminishment. A being you can outsmart is a being you need not respect. A monster that turns to stone in the light of day is a metaphor for a belief system declared obsolete by the new light of faith. The troll became the scapegoat for everything the new order rejected, the perfect villain onto which they could project the shadows of the wild, untamed world they sought to control. This demonizing mask is so effective that we still wear it today. When we picture a troll, we see the simplified, stupid monster of fairy tales, not the cosmic ancestor, the keeper of wells, or the sovereign spirit of the mountain. To truly unmask them, we must scrape away this centuries-old layer of paint and see the original vibrant colors beneath. We must listen past the church bells and hear again the old Galdr in the waterfall's roar. This deliberate demonization created a powerful cultural mask, but the old wisdom refused to die. It simply went underground, hiding in plain sight within the very stories told to condemn it. Those later Scandinavian folk tales, the ones we dismiss as simple children's fables, are not what they seem. They are coded survival manuals, encrypted with the practical knowledge of a people living on the edge of a wild and often unforgiving world. When a story warns of a troll who snatches children who wander too far into the woods, we are hearing a vital, life-saving lesson. The troll is a narrative container for a host of very real, tangible dangers. It represents the wolf or bear lurking in the deep forest, the sudden landslide on an unstable hillside, the treacherous bog that can swallow a curious child whole, or simply the disorienting vastness of the wilderness where one can be lost forever. The tale translates a complex, terrifying set of natural risks into a single memorable character. It is far easier for a parent to say, "Do not go to the old pine grove, the troll there will get you," than to explain every conceivable hazard of that specific terrain. The story becomes a boundary marker, emotionally charged and impossible for a young mind to ignore, effectively keeping the next generation safe by mythologizing the landscape's perils. This coding extends beyond physical survival into social and economic survival as well. Consider the classic tale of the three billy goats Gruff. The smaller goats, threatened by the troll under the bridge, promise that a bigger, fatter brother is coming soon, and the greedy troll lets them pass, only to be defeated by the largest goat. On one level, it is a story about cleverness and courage, but through the lens of the peasant experience, it takes on a deeper resonance. The troll, a powerful, territorial being who demands a toll for crossing his bridge, perfectly mirrors the local lord or tax collector who extracts heavy burdens from the common folk for using roads or bridges on his land. The troll's overwhelming strength represents the sheer, unchallengeable power of the nobility. The goat's solution is not direct confrontation, which would be suicidal. It is clever deception, a promise of future gain that delays and ultimately outmaneuvers the oppressor. This is the survival strategy of the powerless, using wit to navigate a system where brute force is not an option. The troll's famed stupidity in these tales is not an accident. It reflects a subversive hope, a folk belief that the powerful, for all their strength, are slow-minded and can be tricked by the cleverness of the small. The story is a psychological tool, teaching resilience and cleverness as the weapons of the weak against the trollish weight of feudal authority. In this way, the troll becomes a multifaceted symbol, a narrative Swiss Army knife for the human psyche. It is the avatar of any overwhelming, impersonal threat. In a harsh winter, the troll is the famine that steals your livestock. During a storm at sea, the troll is the drowning wave. In a time of plague, the troll is the unseen sickness that takes your loved ones. By giving these abstract, terrifying forces a shape, a name and a territory, the stories make them feel somewhat knowable, and therefore somewhat manageable. You cannot bargain with a blizzard, but you can imagine bargaining with a storm troll. You cannot reason with a wolf, but you can picture outsmarting a forest troll. This act of personification is a profound coping mechanism. It transforms helplessness into a scenario where the human mind, with its cunning and courage, still has a role to play. The troll under the bridge is always ultimately under the bridge. It has a lair, a weakness to sunlight, a love for riddles, a predictable nature. The chaos is localized, and thus in the realm of story, it can be confronted. These tales were the nighttime rehearsals for the daily struggles of life, a way to practice resilience against a world that often felt as immense and uncaring as a giant. So the next time you hear a simple troll story, listen for the ancient code humming beneath its surface. It is not merely a monster tale. It is the echoed voice of your ancestors, mapping the dangers of their world and whispering the timeless strategies for survival, not just in the wild, but against every form of overwhelming power life can conjure. The coded warnings of folklore find their stark, historical reflection in the cold pages of the Icelandic sagas. These are not myths, but semi-historical accounts of the settlement era, filled with blood feuds, complex legal disputes, and, tellingly, encounters with the hidden world. In sagas like Gretti's Saga and Örvar Odd's Saga, trolls and giants step out of the symbolic realm and into the stark landscape of Iceland itself, creating a fascinating blur between the supernatural and the all-too-human. The hero Grettir the Strong, an outlaw of immense power and grim temperament, faces several such beings. In one famous episode, he cleans out a haunted barrow, battling the undead revenant Glam, who is described with distinctly troll-like traits, immense strength and a malevolent, lingering will. Later, Grettir must confront a troll wife, a monstrous being who dwells in a cave. Their battle is visceral and brutal, a life-or-death struggle against a physical creature of the wilderness. These are presented not as fairy tales, but as real events in a hero's life, suggesting that for the saga audience, the border between the human world and that of the trolls was a tangible, dangerous geography. Yet, the word troll itself is wielded with a double edge in these texts. It is not only a noun for a monster, but also a potent insult hurled between humans. To call a man a troll, or a troll's son, was to accuse him of being more than just ugly or brutish. It implied he was antisocial, dangerously strong, outside the bounds of normal human community, perhaps even touched by or descended from those older, hidden forces. A person exhibiting extraordinary strength, a fierce temper, or a preference for living in isolated valleys might earn this label. This linguistic blur is profoundly revealing. It suggests that trollish qualities were not just out there in the mountains. They were a potential within humanity itself. A person could become so aligned with the wild, so consumed by chaotic rage or solitary pride, that they crossed a subtle threshold in the minds of their neighbors. They were no longer fully human. They were becoming an embodiment of the land's untamed spirit, a force of nature in human shape. This idea that certain people might be influenced by, or even kin to, the hidden folk is a thread that runs deep in Nordic folklore. It transforms the concept from a mere story into a living part of the historical imagination, a framework for explaining the outliers, the impossibly strong, the unnaturally long-lived, and the terrifyingly fierce individuals who walked the same earth as everyone else. The saga authors made little distinction between fighting a human berserker and fighting a cave troll. Both were eruptions of the same chaotic, destructive power into the world of men. So when Grettir the Strong, himself an outsider who lived in caves and was feared by many, battles a troll, it feels like a clash of mirror images, a man fighting the very destiny his society has already assigned to him. The troll in the saga is both a real monster in a cave and a shadow cast by human fear onto those who dwell too close to the wild. This historical echo confirms that the line between man and myth was always porous, and the mask of the troll could sometimes be worn by a human face, staring back from the edge of the firelight. The saga's blurry line between man and monster is permanently etched into the very ground of the north. To walk across Scandinavia today is to traverse a living storybook, written not on paper, but in stone and shadow. This is mythic geography, where the landscape itself is the final, unshakable testament to the Jotnar. You need only listen to the names. In Norway, there is Trollheimen, the troll home, a vast and rugged mountain range. There is Trollstagen, the troll's ladder, a breathtakingly steep and winding road that claws its way up a mountainside, a path fit only for giants. There is the Troll's Church, or Trollkirkja, a mysterious cave system where the echoes are said to mimic ancient chants. These are not random titles. They are declarations. They tell you directly whose domain you are entering. It is a way of mapping the unseen, of inscribing the memory of the primal beings onto the official charts. The land remembers its creators, and the people, through their language, honor that memory every time they give directions or plan a journey. But the monuments go beyond names. Look at the natural sculptures. Along the Norwegian coast, you will find Trollpikken, the troll's penis, a distinctively shaped sea stack. In countless fjords, you will see towering, isolated pinnacles of rock. The local legend for each is nearly identical. That is not a rock formation. That is a troll, caught by the sunrise as it tried to flee or to cause mischief, forever frozen in its final moment. A cluster of boulders in a field becomes a family of trolls turned to stone. A mountain with a face like cliff becomes a slumbering giant. This is not mere whimsy. It is a profound, animistic act of storytelling. Before geology gave us scientific explanations for erratic boulders and glacial moraines, the human mind sought a narrative. The most powerful, resonant narrative available was the one already woven into their spiritual fabric, the story of the Jotnar. So, the strange and the majestic in the landscape were not accidents of erosion. They were artifacts of a cosmic drama, the petrified bodies of the primordial beings. This transforms the entire region into an open-air museum of mythology. Every hike becomes a pilgrimage through a gallery of frozen giants. The geography does not just contain stories, it is the story. The mountains are their slumbering backs. The deep, dark forests are their cloaks. The thunderous waterfalls are their voices. This mythic geography served a crucial psychological and spiritual function. It made the overwhelming power and scale of the Nordic wilderness comprehensible, even intimate. A terrifying, impassable mountain range is less alien when you know it is the home of the Trollheimen beings. A perilous cliffside road is more navigable when you recognize it as the Troll's Ladder, a path they themselves might have used. By naming and mythologizing the fierce aspects of their environment, the people entered into a relationship with them. They were no longer confronting a blind, indifferent force of nature. They were navigating the territory of ancient, named powers. This practice kept the memory of the Jotnar alive in the most durable way possible, not in fragile books or fading oral tales, but in the immutable granite and basalt of the continent itself. As long as those mountains stand, the trolls are not forgotten. Their story is told by the wind howling through a high pass, by the slow drip of water in a deep cave, by the sheer, silent wall of rock that greets you at the end of a valley. The land itself is their eternal memorial, and we are merely walking through their colossal, petrified biography. That mythic geography of stone giants mirrors a landscape within us. These towering, petrified beings are not just in the mountains. They reside in the deepest caverns of the human mind, in the territory we call the unconscious. To truly unmask the troll, we must recognize it as one of the most powerful psychological archetypes, a symbol of what the great psychologist Carl Jung termed the shadow. The shadow is not a monster in the traditional sense. It is the totality of everything we have repressed, denied, or deemed unacceptable, both personally and culturally. It holds our raw instincts, our untamed emotions, our chaotic creativity, our forbidden angers, and our deepest, most primal strengths. The troll, with its immense power, its connection to the wild earth, and its exile from the orderly realms, is a perfect portrait of this hidden self. Think of the ego, our conscious identity, as the well-ordered village of Asgard. It builds walls of politeness, laws of social conduct, and a clear self-image. But just outside those walls, in the dark forests and misty mountains of the psyche, the troll dwells. It is everything the ego tries to keep out, the rage we suppress to be nice, the wild intuition we ignore for logic, the creative chaos we stifle for productivity. When the ego's sunlight of full conscious awareness shines directly on this shadowy troll, what happens? According to the old tales, it turns to stone. Psychologically, this is a stunning metaphor. The ego, terrified of being overwhelmed by this raw, primal material, petrifies it. It freezes those chaotic feelings and instincts into rigid, lifeless patterns, neuroses, or unconscious habits. We do not integrate the anger, we become chronically irritable. We do not acknowledge our wild creativity. We suffer a creative block as solid as granite. The troll turned to stone is the shadow, locked away and immobilized, its vital energy lost to us. The gods' entire saga teaches us a different path. Recall their blurred lineage, their marriages to giantesses, their reliance on giants like Mimir for wisdom. They did not simply destroy their chaotic kin. They integrated them. They made the wild force a part of their own story. This is the esoteric instruction for psychological wholeness, what Jung called individuation. It is not about slaying the inner troll. It is about doing the brave work of Utista within ourselves, sitting out in the darkness of our own psyche to listen to what the shadow has to say. Integrating the inner troll means consciously acknowledging those repressed parts, not to act out their chaos blindly, but to harness their immense power. That repressed anger, when brought into the light of awareness, can transform into the strength to set boundaries. That wild intuition can become a profound source of guidance. That chaotic creativity can break through stale patterns and birth something entirely new. Your inner troll is the source of your most primal vitality. When the god Thor channels his giant-born rage, he wields Mjolnir. When Odin embraces the wisdom of his giantess lineage, he learns Seidr. Your shadow holds similar treasures, but you must be willing to cross the bridge and meet it. This is not a passive process. It requires the courage of the saga heroes, but the battle is internal. You must face the riddle the troll asks, which is often a question about your own denied motives or hidden fears. Answering honestly is the toll for passage, the act that proves you are ready to receive the shadow's strength. To ignore or continually fight this inner giant is to live a fragmented life, where a part of you is always frozen in stone, draining your energy to keep it locked away. But to integrate it, to bring the troll into the whole of your conscious self, is to become more complete, more resilient, and authentically powerful. You become like the hybrid gods, a conscious vessel of both order and creative chaos, capable of building and of dreaming. The final unmasking reveals the troll was never an external monster to be feared. It is a disowned part of your own soul, waiting in the darkness not to destroy you, but to make you whole. One of the world's most cryptic messages is carved into a 5-ton slab of granite in Sweden. The Rurk runestone, raised in the 9th century, stands as a monumental riddle. Its surface is covered in a swirling, complex inscription of runes, the longest known runic text in existence. To the untrained eye, it is a beautiful puzzle. To scholars, it is a haunting whisper from the Viking age that no one has fully deciphered. The inscription begins with a dedication to a dead son, a father's grief etched in stone. But it quickly spirals into something far more vast and mysterious, It speaks of Theodoric the Great, a 6th century Gothic king, asking who avenged him. It mentions battles, it hints at a great winter, and it seems to weave together history, legend, and prophecy into a single, tangled thread. Among its many cryptic lines, some interpretations point to a phrase about 9 generations of giants. Others see allusions to the final, apocalyptic battle between gods and giants, the conflict that would end the world at Ragnarok. This is not a private diary or a hidden scroll. This is a public monument, erected for all to see in the center of a community. That fact is crucial. It means the grand, cosmic struggle between the forces of order and chaos, between the Aesir and the Jotnar, was not just a story told by firesides. It was a framework so deeply embedded in the Norse mind that it could be referenced on a memorial for a lost child, a lens through which to understand fate, legacy, and the turning of the ages. The stone does not merely record a local event. It connects a personal tragedy to the mythic fate of the cosmos itself. The grieving father who commissioned it was saying, "My son's death is part of a pattern as old as the giants, as inevitable as the coming winter." The trolls and Jotnar, in this light, are not fairy tale creatures. They are the fundamental antagonists in the story of reality. Their conflict with the gods a template for all conflict, loss, and change. When the rune carver chiseled those lines about generations of giants, he was invoking the entire primal history we have been exploring, the ancient, simmering war that defined the boundaries of the world. The workstone makes that war tangible. It is proof that the people of that time lived in a universe where the spiritual was historical, where the deeds of giants were as real as the deeds of kings, and where the shadow of the troll fell across both the mountain and the human heart. This stone, weathered by 1,000 Scandinavian winters, is perhaps the ultimate trollish artifact, a piece of the landscape speaking in riddles, guarding a wisdom we are still struggling to hear. That cryptic runestone whispers of a world where identity was not fixed, but fluid as water. This brings us to the heart of the troll's most disorienting power, shape-shifting. When a troll transforms into a bear, a wolf, or a sudden gust of wind, it is not mere illusion. It is a direct expression of 2 profound and interconnected Norse esoteric concepts, the fylgja and the hammer. To understand this is to see the troll not as a monster in a costume, but as a master of a lost spiritual technology. First, the fylgja, often translated as follower or fetch. This is not a pet or a simple spirit animal in the modern sense. It is an integral part of a person's soul complex, a protective entity that usually appears in animal form. Your fylgja is your fortune, your destiny made visible, and it moves through the world alongside you, often only seen in dreams or at the moment of death. A person with a bear fylgja carries the essence of the bear within their fate, a force of formidable strength and solitude. Now consider the troll. Its deep, innate connection to the raw forces of nature suggests its fylgja is not a separate, hidden companion. It is a manifest and dominant aspect of its being. The troll does not have a bear fylgja, in a sense. It is the bear fylgja of the mountain itself given solid form. This is why shape-shifting comes so naturally to these beings. Their identity is already intertwined with the animal world at the level of soul stuff. The second, even more crucial concept is the hammer. This Old Norse word means shape, skin, or covering. It refers to the aspect of the soul that gives form to your physical body, but in esoteric practice, it was believed this hammer could be altered. Through intense will, ritual, or innate power, a practitioner could project their consciousness into a different hammer, temporarily taking on the form of another creature. This was not an illusion to the eyes. It was a literal, energetic reshaping of one's presence in the world. The troll's legendary shape-shifting is precisely this, a spontaneous and potent alteration of its hammer. When a troll becomes a great elk to stalk through a forest unseen, it is not casting a spell on the hunter's mind. It is changing its soul skin to match that of the elk. When it dissolves into mist to flow through a crack in a cliff, it is shifting its hammer to the form of the element itself. This ability points to a terrifying and respected fluidity of identity. A troll is not a thing. It is a process, a consciousness that can wear many skins, because its true essence is the wild, changeable essence of nature. This is where folklore meets documented shamanic practice across the circumpolar north. The Norse Vitki, or magical worker, and the Somi Noidi sought to achieve exactly this, to journey in the form of their fylgja, to send their hammer forth as a whale or a bird to see distant land. The troll in the stories is what happens when that capability is not a hard-won spiritual achievement, but a natural birthright. It is the untamed, instinctual version of the shaman's art. This reframes every story of a hero battling a shape-shifting troll. It was not a fight against a beast. It was a confrontation with a master of soul projection, a being whose very existence challenged the idea that you are only what you appear to be. The fear it inspired was not just fear of claws and teeth. It was the deeper existential fear of a reality where boundaries are porous, where the wolf that watches you from the tree line might be the mountain's own thoughts, wearing a temporary skin. To respect the troll was to respect a power that humans could only access through years of discipline and danger. A power that reminded everyone that the solid world is far more fluid than it seems. That fluidity of soul and form finds its most potent expression at the places in between. The troll under the bridge is not merely a monster, he is a sentinel. Take the story of the three billy goats Gruff, which on its surface is a simple fable about cleverness and courage, but pull back the symbolic layer, and a deeper map of the soul reveals itself. The bridge is not just a physical structure. It is a classic threshold, a liminal space suspended between two banks of reality. On one side lies the safe, known world of the village and the farmyard, a place of order and community. On the other side lies the lush, green but unknown pasture, a place of potential abundance but also of risk. The troll does not live randomly in the forest or the mountain in this tale. He dwells specifically under the bridge, the guardian of that passage. His famous demand for a toll is not simple greed. It is the ancient law of the threshold, which states that to move from one state of being to another, you must offer something in exchange. You cannot cross from ignorance to knowledge, from childhood to adulthood, from the profane to the sacred, without a sacrifice. In the story, the goats offer a promise, the future sacrifice of their larger brother. This is a ruse, but it follows the symbolic logic. To pass the guardian, you must engage with him. You must negotiate the terms of your passage. This is the core of countless initiation rites across traditions. The seeker approaches a boundary, guarded by a fearsome presence or a daunting challenge. To cross, they must pay with something dear, prove their worth through an ordeal, or answer a riddle that demonstrates a shift in consciousness. The troll is that initiatory guardian. His ugliness and ferocity test the resolve of whoever seeks to cross. Do you have the courage to even approach? Do you have the wit to understand the rules of this in-between place? His defeat by the largest goat is not just a physical victory. It represents the integration of the initiate's own full strength, the mature self that can finally confront and move past the inner guardian of fear or ignorance. This symbolic role extends to all liminal spaces in folklore. Crossroads where paths diverge and choices are made are famously haunted. Cave mouths, thresholds between the sunlit world and the subterranean realm, are classic troll dwellings. The shoreline where land meets sea is the domain of monsters like the Norse Hafgufa. These are all borders, and borders are always guarded. In an animistic worldview, these are not empty zones. They are charged intersections where the membrane between worlds is thin, where energy and information flow between the seen and the unseen. A being of immense power, a troll, stationed at such a point makes perfect sense. It regulates that flow. It ensures that only those prepared for the consequences of crossing are allowed to pass. This reframes every encounter. When a hero must answer a troll's riddle at a bridge, it is not a random test of cleverness. It is a direct examination of the hero's readiness to enter a new state of being. The correct answer is the password that proves his mind has grasped the logic of the liminal space. When a traveler must leave a piece of bread or a sip of milk on a certain stone to pass safely through a forest, they are not bribing a monster. They are performing a miniature ritual, acknowledging the guardian's sovereignty and offering a token of respect for the privilege of passage. The troll, therefore, is the keeper of the gate. Its fierceness ensures that the boundaries of reality are not crossed lightly. Its presence teaches that growth, discovery, and access to new realms, whether physical or spiritual, always come with a cost, a challenge, or a profound shift in understanding. To meet the troll at the bridge is to stand at the very edge of your known world, looking into the mist of the next, knowing you must change in some fundamental way to take the next step. That guardian of the bridge demands a toll of understanding, but who pays the ultimate price to channel the wisdom of the deep earth itself? In the sagas, that figure is not a god or a giant, but a human woman sitting on a high seat, her eyes seeing through time. She is the Volva, the seeresses, and she is perhaps the most direct human link to the trollish heart of Norse reality. Picture her not as a witch in the later, demonized sense, but as a respected and feared professional, a master of the hidden arts. Her tools were specific and powerful. She carried a staff, often of iron or carved wood, a symbol of her authority and a conductor for the energies she worked with. This was not a walking stick, it was a scepter of the unseen. To perform her prophecy, a ritual called Seidr, a special platform or high seat would be built for her. From this elevated position, she would enter a trance, a state of consciousness that allowed her fylgja to travel, her hammer to shift, and her mind to journey across the 9 worlds. She did not just predict the weather or find lost livestock. She navigated the vast currents of fate, the same primal forces that the Jotnar embodied. In the most famous of all Norse poems, the Völuspá, meaning the prophecy of the seeresses, a Volva is summoned by Odin himself. She does not speak as a humble servant. She speaks as an authority older than the All-Father. She begins by recounting the dawn of time, the gaping void of Ginnungagap, the emergence of the giants from the dripping ice. She remembers the birth of the worlds from Ymir's corpse. She foretells the death of the bright god Baldur, and she ultimately reveals the grim details of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods and the burning of the world. Her prophecy is the entire cosmic timeline, from chaos to order and back to chaos again. And crucially, her knowledge encompasses both gods and giants with equal clarity. She is the memory of the cosmos made vocal. This is the profound argument. The Volva acts as a human conduit, a mortal antenna tuned to the ancient, trollish frequency of the universe. She is not of the Aesir, living in their structured hall. She is a traveler in the wilderness of time and spirit, a trafficker with the very primal forces that the gods often war against. Her wisdom is the wisdom of Mimir's well, but she carries it in a human heart. She channels the perspective of the land itself, the long memory of the stone and the root. When she describes the fate of the gods, she does so with the detached, inevitable tone of a mountain watching a storm pass. This makes her a central, yet often overlooked, figure in unmasking the hidden tradition. The trolls and giants are the keepers of this wisdom in their realms. The Volva is the human who has learned the protocols to respectfully request an audience with that knowledge. She sits at the threshold, much like the troll under the bridge, but her role is to mediate, to translate the Galdr of the ancient world into a prophecy the community can understand. She proves that the trollish wisdom was not inaccessible. It required specific skills, immense courage, and a willingness to step outside the safe circle of the firelight and listen to the older, darker songs. The Volva in her trance was performing the ultimate Giantesses, sitting out in the landscape of time itself, and the voices that answered her were the very same forces that shaped the trolls of legend. The Volva's prophecy ends with a world reborn, but the archetype she channeled never truly faded. It simply found new bridges to guard and new shadows to inhabit. In the 20th century, a quiet Oxford professor named J.R.R. Tolkien performed a remarkable act of scholarly resurrection. A philologist deeply immersed in Old Norse and Anglo-Saxon texts, Tolkien did not merely borrow the troll. He re-imbued it with its primal weight, translating the ancient Jotnar from mythic memory into the bedrock of modern fantasy. In his Middle-earth, trolls are not silly sidekicks. They are ponderous, brutal, and literally turned to stone by sunlight, a direct lift from the Scandinavian tales. Think of the three trolls in The Hobbit, bickering over how to cook Bilbo and his dwarven companions, caught and fossilized by the rising sun. Tolkien gave them dialogue, a crude cunning, and a tangible menace. He understood they were more than monsters. They were a fundamental piece of the mythic landscape, representing a raw, anti-creative force that opposes the ordered realms of elves and men. Through his enormously influential works, Tolkien cemented the Norse troll in the global imagination, ensuring that for millions, their first encounter with this being would carry an echo of its ancient, stony power. He rebuilt the bridge between the old world and the new, and the trolls stood firmly upon it. Yet, the archetype is far too fluid to remain only in fantasy novels. It has undergone its most bizarre and telling transformation in our own digital age. We now speak casually of internet trolls. This is not a coincidence. The linguistic choice is profoundly insightful. The modern troll is the archetype stripped to its essential, disruptive core. No longer a physical being in a physical cave, it is an anonymous, chaotic force that lurks in the dark corners of forums and comment sections, under the metaphorical bridge of our social connections. Its goal is not to eat you, but to provoke you to disrupt orderly conversation, and to derive pleasure from the chaos it sows. Like its mythological predecessor, it operates best in shadows, under the cloak of anonymity. It seeks to elicit anger and outrage, a form of emotional toll from anyone trying to cross the digital space in peace. And most tellingly, it often seems impervious to reason. Arguing logically with a dedicated internet troll is as futile as trying to reason with a mountain, the equivalent of shining the sunlight of facts onto a creature that thrives on the heat of conflict itself. The archetype has adapted perfectly. The bridge is now a social media thread. The cave is an anonymous account. The riddle is a deliberately inflammatory statement designed to test the community's patience and cohesion. This evolution proves the concept's terrifying endurance. We no longer believe in literal trolls under physical bridges, but we instinctively recognize and name the same chaotic, boundary-testing, anti-social force when we see it manifest in our new world. It shows that the troll was never just a story. It is a perpetual pattern in the human psyche, a shape-shifting embodiment of the chaos that presses against the walls of any community we build, whether those walls are made of stone or lines of code. The mask has changed, but the disruptive gaze behind it is ancient. That digital troll in the shadows of a comment thread reveals a deep, modern hunger. We have sanitized our world, paved over the wild places, and yet the archetype persists, demanding we acknowledge something older than ourselves. So how do we engage with this primal current, not as a superstition or a fantasy, but as a living, respectful practice? The wisdom is not lost. It is preserved in places like Iceland, where the belief in the Huldrefolk, the hidden people, directly influences the modern world. There, it is common for road construction projects to detour around large, distinctive boulders or ancient, gnarled elf hills. Builders will consult with seers to determine if a planned site disturbs a hidden home, and if it does, the plans are often changed. This is not seen as primitive folklore, but as a matter of practical respect and cultural integrity. It is a powerful, living example of the old animistic contract, where human progress pauses to acknowledge the sovereignty of the unseen inhabitants of the land. This Icelandic tradition gives us a blueprint, a way to translate ancient reverence into quiet, modern action. You do not need to believe in literal little people. The practice is about recognizing that a place has a spirit, a presence, a right to exist undisturbed. It is about shifting from a mindset of ownership and exploitation to one of relationship and reciprocity. Start with something simple. Find a place that calls to you, perhaps an old tree in a park, a stream behind your home, or a solitary rock in a field. Approach it not as a tourist, but as a guest. Before you enter that grove or step off the trail, pause for a moment. In your mind, or even in a whisper, ask permission. It sounds simple, but this act of conscious acknowledgement is revolutionary. It changes your posture from one of conquest to one of request. It opens a channel of respect. Another profound practice is the small offering. This is not about bribing a spirit. It is about participating in an economy of gifts, an ancient human way of building goodwill. Pour a little fresh water, milk, or honey at the base of that tree. Leave a few grains of oats or a piece of bread by the interesting stone. The value is not in the item itself, but in the intention behind the gesture. You are saying, I see you, I respect your home, and I offer this token of thanks for your presence here. It is a ritual of connection, a way to physically enact your reverence. Then there is the practice of Utaister, the sitting out, adapted for our time. You do not need a haunted burial mound at midnight. Choose a safe, quiet spot in nature as dusk falls. Sit comfortably, wrap yourself in a blanket if needed, and simply be present. Let go of the need to think or achieve. Just listen. Listen to the sounds of the land, the wind, the creatures. Feel the temperature of the air, the texture of the ground beneath you. Open your awareness to the feeling of the place itself. This is not about seeking visions, though they may come. It is about tuning your frequency to a slower, older channel, allowing the consciousness of the land to make itself felt in your own awareness. In that stillness, you might sense the patient weight of the stone, the vibrant network of the roots, the ancient memory of the hill. This is how you meet the Landvitja, not as a monster to be feared, but as the silent, sentient essence of the world around you. The goal of all this is not to summon a troll from under a bridge. It is the opposite. It is to build a gentle, ongoing relationship with the unseen consciousness of nature. It is to replace fear with familiarity, and exploitation with exchange. When you practice this, you are not engaging with a fairy tale. You are performing a modern act of animism, re-enchanting your corner of the world by acknowledging that it was never disenchanted to begin with. You are honoring the troll by remembering its true name, the spirit of the place. And in doing so, you begin to heal the ancient rift between the human village and the wild, waiting mountain. That quiet act of re-enchantment is a whisper against the coming storm. The ultimate destiny of the Norse cosmos is not a permanent victory of order, but a cataclysm of fire and ice, where the trollish forces return to claim everything. This is Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, and it is here that the Jotnar reveal their final, terrifying purpose. They are not just enemies to be defeated. They are the essential, cleansing fire that allows a new world to be born. The prophecy is stark and inevitable. The bonds that held the great wolf Fenrir, child of Loki and the giantess Angabotha, will shatter. The Midgard serpent will rise from the ocean depths, poisoning the seas and skies. Loki himself, the ultimate insider troll, will break free from his agonizing bonds and steer the ship of the dead. From the fiery realm of Muspelheim, the fire giant Surtur will march, his flaming sword brighter than the sun, to set all 9 worlds ablaze. The gods, for all their mead halls and mighty walls, will march out to meet this onslaught in a final, futile battle. Odin will be swallowed by Fenrir, Thor will slay the serpent, only to stagger 9 steps and fall dead from its venom. The sun will be eaten, the stars will vanish, and the earth itself will sink beneath the boiling sea. This is not a punishment, it is a cycle completing itself. The ordered world, built from the corpse of the primal giant Ymir, is being consumed by the very chaos from which it was formed. The trollish forces are not invading, they are coming home. They are the cosmic reset button, the embodiment of the truth that no structure, no matter how divine, lasts forever. The great wall of Asgard, built through trickery and giant labor, cannot hold back the tide of time and entropy. In this final, blazing context, the trolls and Jotnar are revealed as agents of necessary destruction. They are the forest fire that clears the old, dead wood so new seedlings can sprout in the enriched soil. Without this conflagration, the cosmos would grow stagnant, rigid and lifeless, trapped in an endless, repeating pattern. The gods' struggle was never to win an eternal war. It was to steward a beautiful, temporary world for as long as the cycle allowed. And here is the most crucial, hopeful secret woven into the doom. The Volva's prophecy does not end with silence and ashes. She sees beyond the flames. The earth will rise again from the water, incredibly green and fair. Fields will grow unsown. In this new, pristine world, the surviving sons of the gods will find the golden game pieces their fathers once owned. 2 human beings, sheltered deep within the world tree Yggdrasil during the fire, will emerge to repopulate the earth. A new son of the daughter of the old will trace a fresh path across a clean sky. The cycle does not end with annihilation. It culminates in renewal. The trollish chaos is not the opposite of creation. It is the violent, essential first phase of it. The fire giant Surtur does not burn the world out of malice. He is the cosmic gardener, wielding a flame to clear the field. The wolf Fenrir is not merely a monster. He is the jaw of time, closing on an age that has reached its natural end. This transforms our understanding completely. The troll under the bridge, the giant in the mountain, the simmering rage of Loki, they are all fractal pieces of this ultimate, cosmic force. They are the small, local reminders of the great, cyclical truth. Every sunset that turns a troll to stone is a miniature Ragnarok. Every winter that grips the land is a seasonal echo of the Fimbulwinter that precedes the end. The forces that guard a single forest or a lone mountain stream are participating in the same eternal pattern as Surtur with his flaming sword. They are the custodians of chaos, ensuring that the wild, untamed and destructive potential never disappears, because the world needs it to one day begin again. To fear the troll, then, is to fear the necessary death that makes rebirth possible. To demonize the Jotnar is to curse the very mechanism of cosmic regeneration. Their final unmasking reveals them as the midwives of a new world, terrifying and brutal in their methods, but absolutely vital to the health of eternity. They are the darkness that makes the new dawn meaningful, the silence that allows a new song to be heard. So the mountain is not just a mountain, and the troll is not just a monster. We have journeyed through layers of time and meaning, and what we find at the core is not a simple creature, but a profound and multifaceted symbol. The troll is a living paradox, a being of many masks. It is, first, the primordial nature spirit, the conscious landvita that gives voice and personality to the untamed world, from the whispering forest to the groaning glacier. It is the psychological shadow, that immense, repressed part of our own psyche where raw instinct and chaotic creativity reside, waiting to be integrated or to petrify us with fear. It is a historical memory, a fossilized echo of the pre-Christian animistic worldview that saw every rock and river as a living, intelligent neighbor. It is a cosmic force, the Jotnar essence of chaos and destruction, that is also the essential, creative spark from which new worlds are born at Ragnarok. And it is the guardian of thresholds, the sentinel at the bridge, the cave mouth, and the digital forum, testing all who wish to cross from one state of being into another. The hidden truth, now unmasked, is starkly beautiful. These beings were never simple villains in a child's bedtime story. They were integral, respected, and deeply feared aspects of a holistic worldview. They represented the necessary counterbalance to order, the wild counterpart to the hearth, the chaos that makes creation possible. Their demonization was not an act of understanding, but of simplification. It was a cultural mask painted over a complex spiritual reality to make a new, rigid doctrine easier to swallow. That mask turned a sacred dialogue with the world into a scary story, transforming the wise guardian of the mountain into a stupid beast to be tricked. But the stone remembers, the old names on the map remember, and somewhere deep within us, in the shadow where our own ancient instincts stir, we remember too. The troll was never under the bridge to stop us. It was there to make sure we were truly ready to cross. The final unmasking leaves us not with a monster, but a mirror. To peel back the layers of troll lore is to recover a vision of the world that has been painted over by centuries of simpler stories. It reveals a cosmos where every mountain had a voice, every forest held a thought, and every stream sang with a consciousness of its own. Our ancestors did not live in a dead landscape. They lived within a vast, breathing community of beings, engaged in a constant, respectful negotiation between the human village and the wild mountain. The troll was a crucial term in that negotiation, a name for the sovereign spirit of a place, for the raw chaos of creation, for the shadow we carry, and for the guardian of every threshold we must cross to grow. This was not mere superstition. It was a sophisticated, animistic wisdom that understood humanity as a participant in a living world, not its conqueror. That wisdom was not erased. It was fossilized, turned to story stone by the glaring light of a new age that preferred a world it could control to a world it had to converse with. So the question now turns to you, and to the ground beneath your own feet. Look at the landscape around you, wherever you are. That oddly shaped tree in the park, that lone boulder in a field, that patch of woods that always feels a little too quiet. Our ancestors would have known them as someone, not something. They would have sensed a presence there, a landvita with its own history and its own rules of engagement. What local stories, now dismissed as old wives' tales or ghost stories, might hold the faint, coded echo of that same knowing? What names on your local map hint at a forgotten relationship with the land? The work of unmasking does not end with Norse mythology. It begins with your own attention. So we leave you with one final, reflective question, the true heart of this entire journey. What masks have we placed on the wild, both outside and within ourselves? We have paved over the living soil and called it progress. We have demonized our own primal instincts and called it civilization. We have turned the ancient, speaking giants into silent, stupid monsters in children's books. But the mountain remains and the shadow still stirs. The invitation is to look again with softer eyes and to listen for the old stories humming beneath the surface of the world. We would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have a local legend or a strange place that feels alive? Share your own encounters with troll lore, in any form, in the comments below. If you crave more journeys into the hidden layers of myth and esoteric truth, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, remember to always question the stories you are told, for behind every simple monster, there is often a forgotten world waiting to be remembered.